Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Wilkes. If we haven't met before, I'm the program manager at the TomTom Foundation. And on behalf of our board and our team, I'd like to thank each of you for being here with us today. Today's event is part of a 7-week virtual event series called the Cities Rising Summit. All Cities Rising events will be available on a pay-what-you-can scale thanks to the support of our sponsors and community members like you. This afternoon's conversation is about careers in clean energy, a field that continues to grow here locally and across the state and region, and a sector that at TomTom, we've always taken pride in elevating as a path to more sustainable and resilient communities. Today's session will be in 2 parts. First, we will hear from panelists from 4 leading companies in the field about best practices for building a career in clean energy. That will last about 30 minutes. And secondly, you will get a chance to join a private Q&A session with our speakers. Keep an eye on the chat near the end of today's talk for a link to join that separate session. This program is brought to you by SunTribe, whom we thank for their incredible support and collaboration this year as well as in years past. With that, I'm pleased to introduce you to our moderator for this afternoon, Rob Karate, who is the Senior Advisor for Public Affairs at SunTribe. Rob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. And thanks again to the TomTom Foundation and the whole festival staff for organizing this. This is obviously a unique and challenging time for everyone, but especially for a festival that is really great about bringing people together here in Charlottesville from around the country. So we really appreciate the pivot to this, digital Cities Rising format, and we're grateful for all the leadership that you and your team continue to show. We've got a great panel today. As Ben mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about careers in clean energy, talking about opportunities for young professionals in clean energy, and just learning a little bit more about this industry and what folks can do. So on the panel today, we have a number of really talented folks who kind of run the gamut in terms of experiences and roles within their organizations. We've got Hayes Frame, who's the Senior Government and Communications Manager at Ørsted, which is a Danish multinational power company that, as some of you might know, is engaged in Virginia's first ever offshore wind project right now. We have John Finnerty, who's the Director of Business Development at Standard Solar, which is an award-winning national solar developer based in Maryland that does everything from utility scale to community solar, kind of to everything in between. And then we have Drew Price, Managing Director at Hexagon Energy, who are our neighbors here in Charlottesville. They're a leading utility scale solar and energy provider that's doing some really exciting work both here in the Commonwealth and kind of throughout the region. And then finally, we have Jennifer Butler, who's the head of talent management at SunTribe, and someone who I'm fortunate enough to call a colleague. And we're really excited to have all of you. So first of all, thank you to all of you for participating, being part of this discussion. Really excited to see how this goes today. So I'll start with a big question for everyone on the panel. Clean energy obviously is growing pretty rapidly. It's an exciting field. It's something that I know we're all pretty thrilled to be a part of. I'm wondering if each of you can take a minute or 2 or 3 if you want, and talk about your own journey to the clean energy space, a little bit about your career and how you first started getting engaged, both with your company and with clean energy generally. Because I think there are a lot of folks who are listening in, who are thinking, hey, how could I get involved in clean energy? What are the roles and opportunities there? So we could start with just kind of a personal, how did you all get involved in this work? How'd you come to? And I'll start with Hayes, and then we'll move around the room.
Great. Thanks, Rob, and thanks to TomTom for allowing me to be here today. When we talk about careers in the clean energy sector, it's a topic that's been around for a while, obviously, but there's growing interest and increased interest given a lot of the technologies that are being deployed nationwide and the commercialization of a lot of those technologies. And so how I got into the space, just so you know where I am today, I'm Government Relations Communications Manager for the offshore side of Ørsted, which was mentioned as a Danish-based company. We're the largest offshore wind developer in the world. I actually came into this role from a political science and public affairs background, got my undergraduate degree in political science and religious studies, and then worked on a few political campaigns, was in a gubernatorial administration for a few years before I left and got my MBA. So took a turn for a graduate degree in the business realm, brought that back, married it with my government affairs experience, and started working in public affairs, so media relations, grassroots consulting, lobbying, and then went back into another gubernatorial administration. And that's really where I began to intersect with energy and energy policy and clean energy policy, particularly in a significant way. I was the energy policy advisor for the previous Virginia governor, Governor Terry McAuliffe. And really, when I walked in as advisor for infrastructure in the Secretary of Commerce and Trade's office, my boss said, "Welcome. You have a few issues," and then handed me the entire energy portfolio of the administration and said, "Have at it." And so it was a pretty steep learning curve, although I had some experience in energy prior, but really spent the next couple of years shaving that learning curve and working with a lot of great people in the clean energy industry throughout Virginia. Sun Tribe is a good example. Some other folks and some other companies around the state to really try and create a frame of reference for clean energy in Virginia that moved from it is only and solely a way to save the environment, which is not insignificant. Obviously, that is incredibly important and critical, but really take it to it being an economic development and economic growth proposition for the Commonwealth. And so that's how I got to my role. I kind of joke my career path was more a meandering river than a highway in the Midwest. And that's often how professional development goes. Not closing doors because you don't think that's the path you want to go down is certainly for me was an important part of my career and professional growth. Seeing opportunities and seeing things to do as opportunities, not looking for reasons why it doesn't work, but looking for reasons why it could work. And you never know when you get into a particular field where it's going to take you. And so having that openness and that open-mindedness of different avenues can ultimately get you to a place where you want to be, I think is an important trait to have, and it's an important piece to carry with you through professional development.
That's great, Hayes. Thanks. And for those of you watching, all of us public affairs people are not required to grow beards at the beginning of our careers here. It's a choice Hayes and I have made, but if you're interested in that part of the clean energy world, I promise we welcome non-bearded folks as well.
It's not a prerequisite. Mine is fairly.
Drew, why don't we move over to you? Talk a little bit about Hexagon and the journey you all have been on, because I think there'll be some similarities, but I think there's some differences in the story with Hayes.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hey everyone, I'm Drew. I appreciate y'all coming out today and listening to us talk about this. So yeah, my career path was a little bit different. I studied engineering undergrad and went into IT consulting after school and kind of parlayed that into doing environmental consulting for a number of years. I think for me, the environmental angle of clean energy has always been like sort of my calling and my passion. And so before this, for a number of years, I'd worked with different governments around the world to set up carbon trading platforms and really worked more on the policy side. And it was amazing work and I really enjoyed it, but I had a desire to make a more direct and tangible impact in the fight against climate change and in putting more clean power on the grid. And so was lucky enough about 6 years ago to meet Matt Hansman, my co-founder, our CEO, and the timing was right. We started Hexagon a little over 5 years ago with the goal of being a Virginia-based developer and hoping and thinking that we could bring both solar projects and solar jobs and clean energy jobs generally to Virginia. And I don't think we could have predicted what it's become 5 years later and what would have happened just earlier this year in the General Assembly. So it's been a really exciting time to be involved in clean energy. And, I think that for all of you who are local or who are in Virginia, you're in a good place if you're interested in getting involved in clean energy. There's a lot going on, a lot of ways to get engaged. And I know Rob wants to get into that more as we talk, but yeah, thanks so much.
That's awesome, Drew. And it probably helps all of you to look for evidence of design. 4 people we have on the panel today, we asked them to come be part of this panel, not just because they're some of the nicest and most talented people in our field, but also because they do have a variety of ways into the field and a variety of experiences that help inform this. John, I don't think we can let the Virginia folks have all the fun. Talk a little bit about the work that Standard's doing in Maryland and across the country, and a little bit about your own journey to Standard and to clean energy. Would love to hear about that.
Rob, great, thanks. Appreciate that. And yeah, across the river in Maryland, we've been headquartered in Rockville since about 2004. And it's been a pretty exciting, path in working with, all things, energy management, and of course, solar. And it's been fun to be part of a lot of different projects, from some of the earlier, rooftop PPAs through some of the larger ground mounts, as well as some pretty innovative carports with storage projects. And being at Standard, we've had the ability to work with a lot of different types of technology and organizations and teams across the country. And so it's been a place where we're always learning. You hear that often, but it's very true in this industry. You're always learning every day, every week. There's new things to keep up with, whether it's on the policy side or technology or finance. And just a couple, comments as of how I got into this. And I've always been interested in finding new ways to work with energy and energy efficiency, from early days of growing up in upstate New York, where my parents would always tell me to turn off the lights or close the windows, and I thought there'd have to be a better way to get through that, issue and that problem. So energy efficiency has always been, front and center, and it's been a fun industry to be part of.
That's great. Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And I was a Marylander for a number of years, so we don't hold that against you on this panel. My wife and I lived in Annapolis for a number of years and loved it and miss it. It's a great state.
Yeah.
Jennifer, coming to you, I know, like Hayes and like myself, you're a little more of a career switcher. So interested in hearing a little bit about your path to clean energy and talk a little bit about that and about SunTribe.
Of course. So a little bit about SunTribe. I am the talent manager for SunTribe Solar. SunTribe is located in downtown Charlottesville, so we're a local company. We currently have over 70 employees, which I know everybody by name in that role that I'm in. We have over 100 projects that are being completed or under development right now. I am not on the forefront of a lot of those projects, but I am on the back end on the forefront of human relations. So a lot of what I do is working with SunTribe employees and SunTribe development employees, making sure that they're successful in their roles and what they need to have done. One of the reasons why I came into solar, I am a big career switcher. I'm one of the rare unicorns, I guess you can say. I was in the medical industry for over 10 years. I actually went to school to get my degree in healthcare administration. I thought I was gonna, at one point, be a medical doctor or a nurse, something like that. Realized I was terrified of needles and would not go down that route. But the one thing that was continuous in what I wanted to do was to help people and have human relations with individuals. And I ended up taking kind of a metaphor from the Meander River. I'm the individual that was going down 95 to 80 miles per hour and decided, you know what, I don't want to go this way no more, and took a U-turn on one of those little bypasses and went the other way. So I landed myself put myself out there, and I'm a big believer of putting myself out into the world and seeing what attracts me. And I wanted to go into solar. I wanted to give back to the world, give back to my community, but at the same time, continue to be in human resources and talent management and human relations. And that is where I'm at now.
That's great, Jen. So let's dig into this a little bit, this issue of talent, because I know it's an issue that touches all 4 of the businesses that we have we have here on this panel. When you all are thinking about how to attract talent to your companies and what it is that you need and are looking for in your various businesses. Talk a little bit about ways that we've seen our businesses, all of our businesses, be able to successfully attract talent, and what is it that you all are looking for? We're talking to young professionals here, and people are thinking about maybe switching careers. What is it that we're looking for? Is it do we really just need engineers and nothing else, or are there kind of a wide variety of options available? I'll open that up to the whole panel if anyone wants to jump in and has any strong thoughts before we keep moving through.
I'll speak on that. So, I mean, for a lot of the individuals that are listening in right now, one of the biggest things that I tell candidates that are interested in coming to SunTribe, for instance, is you don't necessarily need to go into engineering or mechanical engineering or construction, things like that. The way I look at success in the solar industry is how your skill set and your experience are transferable. So for me, I'm a prime example. I was in the medical industry for over 10 years. My personality, my experience working with individuals and coworkers and employees and clients, those were all completely transferable to come to solar. Just being able to recognize that and having some self-awareness about what you can do in solar makes a huge difference. Also being able to put yourself out there and look at what's available. One of the biggest things that I tell especially females in general, when you're looking at jobs in the solar industry or whatever renewable industry you want to go into, and you see a job that shows interest of you or is interested to you, but you don't check off all the marks on that. Let's say you're missing, 2 years of mechanical engineering. So what? Apply, put yourself out there. If you see potential in it, go do it. And that is something that I feel like is very valuable, both in solar and all industries.
That's super helpful, Jen. John, Drew, Hayes, what else are you guys kind of looking for, seeing? Drew, what do you got?
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of the points that Jen made. I mean, I think, Hexagon is 11 people now. We just hired 2 more folks. We're up to 13. And when we started the company, none of the folks involved had previous solar experience. From the beginning, we've had this idea of hiring for aptitude and not necessarily experience. And I think there is a lot to learn in the solar industry, but you can learn that. We're looking for people who are enthusiastic, who like to learn, who have a self-awareness and can learn from their mistakes and incorporate them. And I think as an industry, it's really important that we continue to build relationships with all the different stakeholders that are involved in a renewable energy project. And so if you have experience and if you like working with a diverse set of stakeholders and trying to solve problems and figure out how to bring them together, that's all stuff that's really core to what we do. And so, yeah, as Jen was saying, certainly previous experience is great and you can learn a lot of that stuff through the solar industry, but there are plenty of other industries or life experiences that bring that and that make you a really attractive candidate to renewable energy companies.
Rob, I'll take it from kind of the larger corporate standpoint, because Ørsted is a publicly traded company and we have about 6,500 employees globally. And so there are a lot of roles within the organization that feel and look very technical and very skill specific. But our corporate culture from a talent development standpoint and talent acquisition standpoint is recognize talent, foster it, and then look where that talent can best add value and create, add value for the company, but also add value and create value for the individual. So it's not just about going out and finding talent so we can kind of extract it and do the best business we can. Talent thrives and is most productive, and people are most productive when they love what they do and they're in a position to be successful, and the company puts them in that position. And so as we think about ramping up in new markets like the US, we obviously are looking for people who do, environmental permitting or have done onshore or large infrastructure project development. But we also look for individuals who show that they are interested, they're passionate about it, and that they have the capacity to learn quickly and embrace new challenges. And I think those are important traits to have. And so getting back to some of the previous points, if you don't check all the boxes on a particular application, that doesn't mean you're not the most qualified or you're not qualified for that. So that's an important point, and I think it's worth kind of threading through all of our discussions that it is worth putting yourself out there. It is worth showing what skills and attributes you have. Maybe you get into the interview and you realize it's not the right position for you, but you certainly can't understand that or know that until you've gone through at least the first couple of steps. So it's important for companies, and I certainly think Ørsted does it quite well, to recognize talent in the various forms that it takes. But it's also important for folks who are looking to get into companies or get into industries to recognize that when it says something on paper, that doesn't mean that's the only way that that talent and skills are evaluated. You have to put something in an application, but that doesn't mean if you don't check all the boxes, you're not qualified to be successful.
Yeah, very, very good. Just a couple quick comments on that. Overall, it's just a message to all the folks that are interested in joining the industry, is that it has grown so much where the mix of jobs is so broad. So like everyone has been saying, you can see a job description, have an interest in it, apply for it, but you can have additional discussions with the HR teams about what other opportunities may be there, because they certainly are ever expanding. And with the right enthusiasm and skill set and motivation, there's a lot of good choices available.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Let's dig in a little bit into maybe the other side of this, which is, there are lots of opportunities, but for companies that kind of run the gamut here, and for all of your companies, what are some big barriers to finding talent? Right? We all want to find talented people. We want to nurture them. We want to give opportunities to every possible pathway. But, what are some of the challenges? What are the roadblocks that we're seeing as an industry? And then, curious if anyone has any thoughts on how to break down some of those barriers. I'll open that up to the whole group. Hayes?
Yeah, Rob, this is a good point. I pulled a slide up that I've used in the past, and I'm just looking at it. We have a whole range of jobs, of roles that we need filled, that I think one of the big barriers is folks don't know what they are. We are a fairly new industry in the US, and so when people think offshore wind, they oftentimes visualize the turbine sitting in the middle of the ocean, but they have a less of an understanding of what it takes from an individual perspective to actually put that in the water. And it's not. Putting it in the water can be a relatively short process. It's everything leading up to that and then everything after that. So just a few examples of these roles, operations managers, project managers, health and safety advisors. We do apprenticeship programs, coordinators of logistics, both offshore and transport, legal counsels, government relations, communications. All of these different roles, just like you have in other businesses and other sectors, play a role in getting projects done and play a role in the success of the company itself. And so one barrier is, and it's a challenge from the organization standpoint, to show people what those opportunities are and be able to reach people who may not otherwise be accessible or be readily available. We have to dig. We can't just rely on kind of the low-hanging fruit methods to go out and attract talent, because oftentimes you find the best talent in places where they're not looking and you haven't looked in the past. So one example of trying to break down those barriers from a policy standpoint is you are seeing a lot more emphasis on requiring projects to reach into low-income or historically disadvantaged or minority communities to try and demonstrate what those opportunities could be. That includes doing K-12 STEM outreach and education, as well as doing job fairs in some of those areas, partnering with third-party organizations who have deep connections in those communities. And that's something we're seeing from a policy standpoint that says, yes, we want these clean technologies and we will create certain incentives or certain mandates to get it done, But in order to do that, you have to be reaching into some of these communities that haven't historically had these opportunities. And so it's both kind of a carrot and a stick in terms of pushing the industry to reach in, while also trying to create some programs at the state or local levels that that can organize efforts within the communities to connect them to the organization.
I couldn't agree more, Hayes. John, Jennifer, Drew, other thoughts on barriers to the kind of workforce we're all trying to build? Clearly, there's some through lines in where we want to be, but what are some of the roadblocks stopping us?
Some of the barriers that we've seen, maybe just relating to timing. At Standard, we're working in multiple markets, so it's getting the word out to folks that are interested in working in those markets. Whether it's West Coast or East Coast or Northeast. So making sure that the timing is coordinated, and folks that are interested in those areas know we have those opportunities there. And then also just as far as a technical barrier, the industry is growing fast, so there's a need across all of our companies for sometimes some very skilled certified solar technicians. And the NAPCEP certification programs are key and very, very helpful at multiple levels of our organization, whether it's operations, engineering, or construction. And anything we can do as an industry to facilitate more training, and those folks being able to get those certifications would be help keep those barriers at a minimum.
Great.
Yeah. Hey, Rob. So this is Tom. So I'm gonna take this local, I guess, in the sense that I think one of the barriers for us in some ways has been spreading the word about Charlottesville and getting people excited or interested to move here. I think, as people might know, a lot of the companies came together many years ago and formed the Charlottesville Renewable Energy Alliance as a way to promote the clean energy industry within Charlottesville. TomTom has done obviously an amazing job of putting on their Clean Energy Day each year, but I don't think people realize the sort of robust ecosystem of clean energy companies that exist in Charlottesville, and frankly, just sort of innovative young companies in general. So I think, we do best naturally if people have had experience living in Charlottesville or going to school here. For others, it's a little bit harder, and that's something we struggle with, but hope to continue to improve over time as we get the word out about all the opportunity that exists here in Charlottesville and Albemarle.
And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on the local barrier side, as well as, convincing individuals to come to Charlottesville. Charlottesville, in comparison to like DC or a big city in California, may not always be a comparison. One of the things I try to identify in barriers is what is an individual looking for? Besides compensation, what else fills their cup? What else are they looking to have? And so instead of just broadcasting Sun Tribe onto SEO or any of these other larger associations to say, hey, we're looking for individuals. I also love the idea of reaching to community colleges or technical schools, some of these smaller entities that have potential candidates that are interested in doing solar or interested in getting into the solar industry. So just trying to be more inclusive and more diverse in how we are doing our recruiting, our talent management, being more inclusive of that, and just also just trying to see what their niche is, what fills their cup. For some people, it's just maybe a career growth. It also could just be, I want to give back into the world, and I just don't know how to do that. Well, tell me a little bit about what you can do and what you're good at, or what you feel like you're good at doing. When I meet with candidates, it's not so much, well, just send me your resume. Let's have a coffee. Let's talk. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you want to do? Opening that door, being approachable is one of the biggest barrier breakdowns ever. Is if you're approachable, if your industry is approachable, they're going to come flying to the door and ringing your doorbell.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jen. And what I think, again, ties the four companies we have here really together, even though everyone occupies a different niche within the renewable energy, clean industry. We've got folks that are based in Virginia, to larger multinationals here. Is that there is a real sort of human focused idea that runs through all of these companies, and that you're really looking for people and good people. Let's dig in a little bit. I've heard a little bit of language from everyone here on this so far into the idea of inclusion and diversity, and kind of why it matters for our industry. And I guess I'll ask the big sort of question is, two big questions. One, why does diversity and inclusion matter for our industry specifically, and then for our companies? And then the second question is, what can we do to really make bigger steps forward on these issues as industry leaders and as leaders of our own companies? Jennifer, you're involved day to day in recruitment and hiring talent. Talk to me a little bit about diversity and diversity pipelines, and then we'd love to open up to the rest of the panel too, and what you're seeing in your companies.
So diversity is vital for our industry. It allows new pathways for candidates or for individuals to come in. It also, not only is it important for the industry, but it's important for everyone else. When you want to come into solar, which has been around for a while, you want to look for a face that's similar to yours. You want to, if you see someone that looks like you, you could be that person. So having a diverse group of individuals on our team or in solar in general brings out the best in all of us. Having diverse backgrounds and knowledge, it just works and makes it fit well. And just being able to be on the other side of it and saying, hey, I see myself in doing that. Having a diverse group is very important in that way.
Yeah, that's great, Jennifer. We hear this all the time from folks that, they don't see a path for themselves because they don't see anyone that looks like them at companies. And as soon as you do see that, then the opportunities do open.
Yeah.
Hayes, John, Drew, what are you all seeing in your organizations in terms of, trying to reach communities that have traditionally, not been a part of this clean energy revolution, that we really need to be part of it? Hayes, I know there's some initiatives you all are working on.
Yeah, so we are in the energy industry, kind of writ large, clean energy industry more particularly. We need to do a lot better in creating a more diverse workforce. And as Jen said, it's exactly right. You need talent to be able to look at an organization and see a path for themselves. But the organization needs to have diversity within it so it can understand where some other talent is, where talent is in areas that we have not looked at or looked to in the past. And so it's critically important to try and create that diversity for the knock-on effects and long-term effects of creating a more diverse company, a more diverse workforce. It builds upon itself, and that is very, very important. What we are trying to do is really think creatively about how to reach into some of those communities that have been historically underrepresented in the energy industry, in the clean energy industry, and the opportunities that are there, and thinking about how skills that folks are gathering, capabilities that they're gathering over either academic experience or professional experience, how those translate into the clean energy industry if they're not thinking about that as they're going through their career path. So we are trying to do some of those things. And again, some policy is creating some avenues for collaboration with those communities, with local jurisdictions and state jurisdictions to create programs to dive into some of the minority communities, particularly, which again is critically important. The last thing I will say, I think the value of diversity from a business standpoint is, all of these technologies live, work, and impact local communities. And when we go into local communities and show them the benefits and the value of the things that we're doing, some things that feel new and foreign, there can be a natural reaction against it. a natural aversion to that. But if you come in to particular communities and you're speaking through a voice that is familiar and comfortable to them, it makes that dialogue, it makes that conversation much more two-way and much more collaborative, and it can be a bit more disarming than if somebody who comes in and it doesn't look anything like you, doesn't have any of the life experiences that you have, and tries to assure you that this is all good for you and your community. It can ring a bit hollow. So I think diversity is an important piece from an organizational standpoint in trying to be successful in what we do, which is the business part of it, which is deploying these technologies for the benefit of the community and the environment.
Couldn't agree more, Hayes. John, Drew, how are you all thinking about diversity, inclusion, and kind of, building some pathways to success for folks?
Sure, just a couple of points that we see it at Standard as a piece of our strength and growth across the entire organization. It breeds innovation. It keeps people looking at projects uniquely, and it's not just within the organization. It's also diversity with our customers, our project base, our supply chain. Every interaction today is all touching on diversity elements, and in terms of bringing in more folks to the clean energy sector, even outside of employment, we're reaching all kinds of communities and folks that want to get engaged in clean energy through community solar programs, whether it's in various parts of Maryland or Colorado or Minnesota, California, Illinois, Massachusetts. The community solar policy, from a policy standpoint, has provided a platform for a lot of folks to engage in the clean energy sector for being a subscriber. And if on the micro level, and state level, there's a lot of programs that have been put in place to even encourage more focused deployment of community solar programs, and Virginia is just going down that path right now with the shared solar regulations that have are in the works to be ready to go in 2022 and 2023.
Yeah, I guess I would say, to us, diverse, inclusive, and equitable teams are higher performing teams, and they're the teams that people want to work on. And so, I think it has obvious benefit for companies and for the industry as a whole. And the thing we've been really thinking about is, how do we look in places that we wouldn't traditionally look? I think the easy trap, especially being in Charlottesville and being in a small business, is to look to the university and in the university network and graduates. And if you hire within the same sort of places, and you hire, especially in the renewable industry, given that we're already kind of askew, if you hire other people within the industry, then you kind of reinforce that. So how do we, as others have talked about, how do we reach with job opportunities, with training, with other things? How do we reach new places? How do we look at new places? I know a lot of y'all have done the same thing. We've focused very heavily on having interns in the summer as a way of providing opportunities for new people to get exposed to the industry. And then also, like we've talked about, we've had a lot of conversations about hiring for, again, different experiences and aptitude as opposed to specific industry experience, to open that to, again, a broader window of people than just hiring within sort of the renewable energy industry as it exists already. So it's something as a small business we need to get way better on. We're working really hard. Excited about some of the new hires that we've made, and working hard on the positions that we have out there to reach others. And I would welcome any feedback from y'all or anybody on the call on how to get out to different colleges, community colleges, different programs to reach more people.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm hearing from everyone here is there are definitely some real pathways that are already being explored. And then I think there's some real opportunity on the inclusion diversity side, not as a box to check, but as, you know, a pretty core part of the DNA of our industry in terms of, you know, how is it that we can make our industry as strong as it needs to be? It sounds like inclusion diversity is not an add-on to that work. It feels pretty central. You know, want to ask one big last question before we potentially move to you know, some breakout sessions, and for folks who are, you know, who are watching in, you know, we're going to make the panelists available for individual breakout sessions, where you can ask individual questions and kind of continue this conversation. If everyone's a little zoomed out, we understand that too. It's been a long couple of months online here, but wanted to talk for just a minute or two about the flip side of this talent coin here, right? And that's retention. How can we as an industry not just attract really talented people, but what can we do both within our companies and broadly as an industry? What can we do to make sure that we're not only getting, but keeping really good people? Because that feels like the other side of this equation that we would kind of ignore at our own peril. So I'll open the floor there for all four of you. You know, what do we need to be doing on the retention side? How do we keep people kind of in the tent?
Excuse me, excuse me, sorry. I think it comes back to company culture. That's a big one. And then defining what success looks like for people. What fills up their cup. Understanding what our employees need, what makes them successful in their roles. You know, again, what fills up their cup. At SunTribe, we practice a servient leadership model. So it mainly focuses on making sure that our leaders are the ones supporting the work of their teams, and it's just not the other way around. We also are very flexible and receptive to people's needs. And again, back to self-awareness, just recognizing what each individual employee needs to be successful in their roles. And again, that goes back kind of a little into talent management. Is just recognizing, you know, what individuals need to do to be successful in the roles, whether they're an engineer or a project manager. Everyone's different. And so just being able to be flexible and understanding of what everyone's needs are, I think that helps contribute to employee retention very well. And then also, you know, recognizing when employees are not doing well. So, but not because they are having a hard time or anything like that. I mean, just being able to tell an employee, hey, you need to take some time off, go enjoy yourself. You know, I always try to be the gatekeeper of burnout. That's a big thing, especially in today's world, and especially in American culture. You know, people work, and, you know, that doesn't help with employees' well-being. And then also it channels into, you know, company retention, you know, if an employee feels overworked and whatnot. So one of the things that I do is just making sure that all of the employees are doing well, both in their professional and, you know, outside of work health. Just making sure their health is well. And so, you know, making sure that employees take their time off, making sure that they're getting what they need, making sure their needs are being met. Just being able to recognize that and to be flexible in what that looks like for everybody.
Yeah, that's great, Jen. Innovation definitely dies a bit if you have employees who are too tired to do it. That's
yeah. I mean, and then also with COVID, you know, one of the things that SunTribe has done to protect our workers' safety and well-being first is to make sure that everyone feels safe. And so, you know, right now we're remote. You know, everyone is built up for success at home right now. One day we'll be back in the office, but you know, COVID's a big challenge. You know, for some individuals, I'm a big extrovert, so working from home has been a real challenge. But SunTribe has been really successful in making sure that I'm doing well in what I'm doing. And you know, same thing back with everyone else who is who may be either succeeding or struggling with this new world that we're living in.
John, Drew, Hayes, thoughts on how we can keep a really talented workforce and kind of the impact that has on your business? I mean, you know, all three of you are helping run, you know, really exciting, but also like tough businesses to run, given the growth and excitement here. what does retention mean? How do we do it? How do we keep talented people?
Yeah, from a larger company perspective, I think one thing that is critically important, and I don't say that as it only applies to larger corporations. I think I can give a very particular example in my career where smaller organization I was a part of uh, did not really effectively do what I'm about to talk about, and it created some challenges for me professionally. But it's a feedback loop. It's the ability for the company to receive feedback from employees and for the employees to provide feedback to the company about performance, about work-life balance, about effectiveness, about productivity, about management, and then taking that and turning it into action. So it's one thing to just do that exercise where people are talking about strengths, weaknesses, challenges, opportunities for an organization or for employees within an organization. But it's a whole other thing to take those and turn them into action items that create value going forward, both for the organization and for the individual. And in a company I was in, small shop, we didn't really have a particularly effective feedback loop. And after a particular project of which I was brought on kind of came to an end and was transitioning into new and different roles, it really became quite stagnant. And there was not only not an outlet for me to kind of express my feelings about how that was going, there wasn't really an outlet for the organization to convey to me how they were seeing my performance. And so it can create a whatever the opposite of a virtuous cycle is, but it can create kind of a death spiral where the lack of communication and the lack of action can just put both the employee and the organization in, stuck in mud, in a position of inertia that is just too much to overcome. And so I think just that communication and then turning that communication to action items is critically important. And then the other thing is, as Jen was talking about, you need to know what motivates your people, and it's going to be different for different individuals. So being nimble and dynamic enough within your organization to try and customize the work opportunities for those employees so they remain engaged, enthusiastic, and by extension productive for and within the organization. And I think those are some critically important pieces that if you're not staying on top of it, if you're not constantly thinking about how you can improve it, it can create a lot of challenges for employees, but also just for productivity of the organization.
I love that. John, Drew, thoughts on this?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, and just a couple other points. I mean, communication is key in everything we do, and certainly for retention. And within organizations, a lot of organizations may have some key performance measures, KPIs, and that helps just align company goals with what you're doing individually and within your own department, and then with other departments that you're working with regularly. So making sure that when KPIs are communicated out annually, that they're refreshed regularly, and then that wins are celebrated, because often everybody's working so hard on all these projects, and you can be deep into the project, and then it gets completed, and then you're into the next one, and sometimes it's difficult to step back and recognize what's actually was really accomplished. And so it's key important to celebrate wins, and then I think that helps along the way with.
Yeah, I love that, John. We're going to have to invite you over as a special attendee on the Sun Tribe Wins Slack channel. We've got a whole one where we couldn't agree more. That's I think a key thing for folks who are working hard. Drew, in terms of your team, right? What does retention look like?
Well, maybe I'll wrap up on kind of a high level, because I think everybody had a lot of really good specific points. But I think the other thing is just making sure that we all articulate like why it is that we do what we do and how people fit in. I think, when as an employee, when you know why you're doing it and how you fit into that picture and you believe in it and you feel like your career is on a good trajectory, then the inevitable setbacks and pitfalls that arise feel like bumps that you can overcome. And I think when you don't have that, when you don't know why you're doing it, or you don't believe in it, or you don't feel good about where you're going, those are the things that really derail you and really make you suffer. So trying to make sure that we talk about why we're developing solar projects, and to everyone's points earlier, what good that brings to our communities, to our world, you know, whether that be clean power, you know, economic development, all the jobs, all the other wonderful things that, and then how specifically what they do contributes to that. And this industry is so big and it's growing, and these projects are complex. And I think sometimes you just need to step back and understand, you know, what I did today, how did that add value to what we're trying to do here.
And Rob, I'll just add one other thing
Sure.
that personally, I think it's one of those, if I had known then what I know now, expectation management. From an organizational standpoint, when you're bringing somebody on or you're talking about what their roles are, making sure that the expectations that both parties have are actually aligned with reality. Because you don't want to, as an organization, bring talent in, tell them one thing, and then expect them to do something else. But you certainly don't want to tell somebody that you may be bringing in that they will be doing one thing, and then they come into the organization and realize that they're expected to do something completely different. So aligning expectations with reality on the front end, I think, is critically important to not wasting everyone's time, both parties' time, both parties' resources, because as a company, we don't want to hire somebody and then 3 months later have to hire for the same exact spot because it wasn't a right fit. The whole process leading up to hiring is intended to try and create whether or not, and create an understanding of whether or not it is a right fit. And so expectations and reality should be aligned early, often, and maybe it needs to be refreshed continuously, but certainly you need to have those things kind of on two sides of the equation.
Hard to disagree with that. Well, listen, we're coming up to the end of our conversation here. For those of you attending, if you look in the chat window, Ben from the TomTom Foundation has included a link to a short Q&A. If you want to come join the panel over there, we'd be happy to answer your questions individually, your individual career questions. You know, if you're interested in this line of work, and clearly, as this discussion has showed, there are many different lines of work in the clean energy world. So come join us over there. Before we move over, just want to say thanks again, John, Jennifer, Hayes, Drew. For those of you watching, it's very clear that we took the prerogative to gather some of my favorite people in clean energy and have them in for a discussion, because, to be honest, all of you are leading in a pretty significant way this transition that we're talking about, you know, to a 21st century energy economy that makes sense for all of our communities. That's because of the work that everyone on this call is doing. And I think there are a ton of opportunities, both for young professionals and career-changing professionals, to be a part of that. And we want all of you to come and be a part of it. So John, Jennifer, Hayes, Drew, thanks so much. Let's move over to the Q&A, see if anyone's interested in a quick chat. And if not, appreciate your time, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.